Okay. Put my chat box up here so I can see you guys. Okay. So the first thing that I actually want to touch on before we do anything with, annotated bibliographies or anything, I wanted to discuss the two sources that you guys were supposed to read for class today. So the two sources you were supposed to read for class today, we had The Media Exaggerates Negative News, by Steven Pinker. And this was actually published, let me see here. Yeah, 2018. So it was published almost 3 years ago. It was published before the past election. It was published before coronavirus. So it's kind of interesting to look at this source now. So that was one of the sources. It was a nice, easy read. It was a short one. Remember, I print everything off. Nice, easy read, interesting read. And then you guys had that in an absolute state. And I believe we went through it in class. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 pages of sources for this one. But I had told you guys to start on page 3 because those first couple of pages are actually like statistics of the studies that they did. So if you tried to get through those 2 pages, you didn't see my note about starting on page 3, bless your heart, because I don't know that I made any sense of that. I have an irrational fear when it comes to math. So when there's lots of numbers, I shut down. So I had needed you guys to start on page 3 of In an Absolute State. That's when they actually start getting into the meat, I guess, of the actual article. Okay. So here is what I'm going to do. We've done it in class where I've put you guys in groups to discuss. We've discussed it just like, this, where I can't see you, and it's just me yapping at you. We're going to try one more different thing today, and we will see how you guys like it. Okay. So if you have your Blackboard open, I'm going to take us to the discussion board. Okay. Okay. Sorry. As always, you guys have funny comments in the chat box. So I'm just laughing at the comments. I apologize if you guys feel left out on a joke. Okay, discussion board. So if you guys load up the discussion board, you'll see that there's actually 2 new posts at the very, very top of the discussion board. Here's what I want to do. One of the reasons that I like, especially in our virtual format, to utilize the discussion board is because we don't get as much of that interaction. If we're in a face-to-face class, we talk at great lengths about these sources. Some of them are really good, some of them are painful, some of them are eye-opening, but we don't really get that in this virtual format. And as we start writing our essays now, we're going to be reflecting back on these sources that you guys have all read. So as you go to write these essays that are coming up, these papers that are coming up, these discussion boards are great. I think we had once or twice, I had you guys in groups, and as groups you discussed them and then you posted some stuff on the discussion board about those sources. So as you go to write our future papers, and maybe you're like, I think this happened in that source, but I can't remember. Being able to go back to the discussion board and read through the comments from the groups or the comments from the individuals is super helpful. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned in this class before, I have a terrible memory. So if things aren't written down, I'm not going to have any recollection. I need things written down. And so that's why the discussion board is really important and helpful for our virtual class. Okay. So if you have some inward groaning going on right now, knowing that I'm going to make you do a discussion board, I'm sorry, but it's one of those parental, it's for your own good, type of thing. So what we're going to do is there are 2 discussion boards up here. I want you guys to post on both discussion boards. So the first one is in an absolute state. And remember, we talked about how this one it would be a little bit of a rougher read. It's still a super interesting topic, very important, talking about words and how those words can like identify, really important things, as far as anxiety, depression, even like a suicide marker that a computer can actually pick up on language that can identify somebody who maybe might need some help. So it's very, very interesting. And it's talking about absolutist thinking and absolutist words, okay? So for this discussion board, I want you, in your own words, to define absolutist thinking. So if you're drawing a blank, Google it, okay? Google absolutist thinking and kind of see what some of the definitions are, and then just put them in your own words. Same thing for the next bullet point, which is to list 3 absolutist words, okay? Google it. Go see, you'll get a list of absolutist words, okay? I want you to post 3 of those. And then I want to know your thoughts. What did you think of the article? What did you think of its readability, understandability, and credibility? Okay. So as an individual, I want you to address those 3 bullet points. And then I'm going to want you to go back and look at 2 classmates' posts. And maybe they posted something very similar. You can go, hey, I noticed that thing too. And yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking absolutist thinking, or, oh, that's what I thought was interesting as well. Okay. I'm not giving you guidelines as far as, hey, your initial post needs to be 5 sentences long or anything like that. I just want you to have an initial post and then go and respond to 2 of your classmates. Okay. So that's for in an absolute state. Then I want you to go and post for the media exaggerates and look at the 3 bulleted points there. So as far as the media exaggerates, I want you to answer, what are your thoughts? Like, what did you think about the topic or about the article? Do you agree with Pinker's assessment of media? Do you agree with what he said, media is like? And then the 3rd bullet point says, he says, in quotes here, relentless negativity can have other unintended consequences. What I want you to answer is, what do you think some of those unintended consequences of just that relentless negativity could be? Okay. So I want you to have an initial post, answer those 3 bullet points, and then again, go back and look at a couple of classmates and respond to them. Here's how we're going to work it. I'm going to start by going to like a 25-minute mark. And I'm going to be looking at the discussion board and seeing where everybody is at. And, if we need to add more time onto that, then we will. If after this amount of time that I've given you is up and you haven't been able to maybe respond to 2 classmates just yet, it's okay. The most important post is your initial post. Okay. Do you guys have any questions on what I'm asking you to do with those 2 discussion boards? Okay, so let me just answer that. Okay, so pretty sure you guys remember. So for the first discussion board, it's all about in an absolute state. So I would click on it, create a thread. It's got all the questions right there. So your subject could just be Becky's response or Ethan's response, Haley's response, whatever. Answer those 3 bullet points, then go ahead and submit it. You might have to wait a few minutes for somebody else to post. So maybe post your responses to In an Absolute State and then go to The Media Exaggerates, create a thread. Questions are right there. Answer the questions, then go ahead and submit, and then just kind of look to see when your classmates have posted as well. This discussion board, or both discussion boards, these are your opinions, okay? So don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's full of your opinions, your impressions of both articles, okay? All right, so if you guys don't have any more questions, I'm going to let us get started on the discussion board. I'm going to pop in as well. I may not respond to every single one of you, but I'm going to respond to as many as possible. So let me see, we are at 12:46. So what would that be? 15. So I think like at 1:10, I'm just going to turn my mic on and check in with everybody, and we will decide from there what we're going to do, okay? So for now, I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to turn my mic off because I'm going to go to the discussion board as well. But if you guys have any questions as you are trying to participate in these discussion boards, go ahead and let me know in the chat box and I will help you out, okay? So I'll check in again with you guys at about 1:10 and we will go from there. As much of a difficult read In an Absolute State is, it's a super, super important source for me, just because it shows how if you have a pretty good understanding of language and even classification of words, it can actually help to identify an individual's mood. It can help to identify if maybe there's some things that you should be worried about in regards to that individual, you know, anxiety, depression, those suicidal tendencies even. So again, it's the nerd in me, but I mean, language is so powerful in so many different arenas and so many different ways that taking the time to really dissect and pick apart and see how it all works and what doesn't and how does it affect me. I really enjoyed reading your responses on the discussion board. You know, for the Media Exaggerates, I think one of the questions that I had listed in there was when Pinker talks about the unintended consequences of negative news. In one of my other classes, it opened up a huge discussion as far as how that negative media actually fuels the fire of anxiety and depression and everything. But I did read something really interesting today, but I didn't have a chance to research it because I don't know if I 100% believe it. I'm a researcher. I love to check all my sources. But an article came out, a friend of mine posted it on Facebook, so again, you need to research it, that said the suicide rates during this past year actually dropped considerably. So, you know, initially we've been told that suicide rates were skyrocketing, but yet this publication was saying that in the past year, the suicides and attempted suicides, the numbers have actually gone down. So see here again, you've got conflicting resources, and this is why it's important that you guys know how to identify if a source is credible or not. Okay. I'm sorry, we live in a time where we can't take anything at face value anymore. We have to verify it ourselves. So, okay. So just a reminder, you guys, as we are moving forward and you guys are writing, please go back to these discussion boards and look over your classmates' thoughts and your thoughts. Because again, if you're like me and you forget, they are all there. Okay. All right. Yes, we definitely need, actually, I think critical thinking skills should be taught, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but even all the way into elementary school, we need to really start then to work on critical thinking, problem solving skills. It needs to be done right at the very, very beginning. So, okay. Um, Kind of shifting into the next thing. Do you guys have any questions regarding the annotated bibliographies? I believe I graded everybody's first annotation. Now I got to double check. Because I wanted to get it graded so you had an idea if you were on the right track, if there was anything that you were missing. So any questions, even if you saw some of my feedback on your annotated bibliographies, are you confused about anything? What needs to be addressed? How it needs to be set up? Okay, so remember, we have to have that citation entry, right? That has the source, has to be all set up. We have to have our hanging indent, and then we have 2 paragraphs. What is the first paragraph? What is that one supposed to entail? Use the chat box and tell me what's supposed to be in our first paragraph. We'll do pop quiz here. Summary, okay? First paragraph, it is our summary. It is just objective, third person, no opinions. We're just basically telling our reader, hey, this is the name of the article. Here's some of the facts and, whatever. There's some of the points that the this author was trying to get about this topic, okay? And then what is our second paragraph supposed to be? What's supposed to be in our second paragraph? Okay. Second paragraph's where we get to have our opinions, right? Because that is our analysis of the source, okay? It's what we thought of the author, the writing, the tone, the terms, any of the writing techniques that the authors use, maybe the photographs that they used. This is where we get to go and take a deeper look at the author and double check and make sure that they're actually credible. Okay. Okay, so-and-so is a doctorate of blah, 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 which makes them credible regarding this source. Okay. Those are all those different kinds of things that you can have in that second paragraph. And that's where we get to be in first person. I think this, I felt that. Okay. But remember, in that evaluation paragraph, we are not so much talking about the topic, but about the actual source itself. We're like picking it apart. Okay. All right. So I have the discussion board up on our screen right now. I'm just double checking to make sure that is what, okay. Yes, we have the discussion board still up on the screen. So I had popped today's class discussions to the very top. I will eventually move them down by the other sources. But you guys were asked to post on the annotation bibliography source 2 revision group discussion board. Whew, that's just a mouthful of a title. You were asked to post your draft on that discussion board. Okay, because we want to have a revision group again. So I'm going to scroll down until we get to that. Okay, so we're just going to keep going. It's like almost at like the very, very bottom is where all the annotated bibliography ones. So you guys already did source 1. All right. And we did that revision group. I think that was last week where we did all of that. So we're going to look at source 2 today. Now, you'll notice, I have all the information up here on the source 1 revision group board, but all of the annotated bibliography revision groups are all run the same. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing that you did with source 1. It has 2 aspects. So to get full points, you need to publish your draft. Okay, rough draft, because we're not looking for perfection. Matter of fact, as terrible as it may sound, we actually kind of anticipate you to make mistakes in your rough draft. You know, that's what we're for. And then second, you guys have to respond to 2 others, okay? And we're following the whole 2 positives and 2 things maybe they can work on. Okay, so we're following that 2 by 2 response thing again. So you get points for your draft and you get points for your responses. If you respond and don't have a draft, then you only get points for the responses. And if you only have a draft and you don't respond, you only get points for your draft. So that's why it's important that you guys get the draft on the board, even if it's not what you consider to be a full draft. It's fine. It's fine. So here is what I want to do. Okay, I'm looking at our time here. Let's take 20 minutes and jump on this revision group discussion board. Okay. In 20 minutes, I'm going to turn on my mic and check in with you guys, see where we're at. We may take a break and then come back to the annotated source 2 revision group, or we may move on. We'll kind of see where everybody is. So we're going to go to the source 2 revision group. We're going to open up our classmates' drafts. Okay. Make sure you read 2 of your classmates' posts, 2 posts. Make sure you post 2 positives and 2 things they can work on. So maybe I'm going to read Haley's and I'm going to say, these 2 things were great. Why don't you work on these 2 things? And then maybe I would go to Tatum's and say, hey, these 2 things were great. Maybe you should work on these 2 things. Okay. So go to 2 of your classmates' posts and then make sure that each of them, you tell them 2 positives and 2 things to work on. It's a lot of 2s. Any questions on that? Okay, so remember, I don't care if you don't have a draft on this discussion board. I still want you to be looking through and providing some feedback for your classmates. All right, and I'll be doing it as well. So 20 minutes, I'm going to turn my mic back on. So at about 1:50, checking the clock here, about 1:50, I'll turn my mic back on and we will decide what we will do from there. Okay. Remember, if you have any questions, I am here. Use the chat box. Let me know if you're having some technical difficulties. I know a couple of you are having some computer glitches this afternoon. Okay? All right. Check in with you in 20 minutes. the responses to the Source 2 revision group aren't actually due until midnight tonight. But I was just trying to give you guys some time in class so that way, you know, as a peer looking at somebody's paper or even your own, if you guys had any questions, it's nice to be in class so you can ask those questions right away. Okay. So here is what I would like to do. We are at 150 right now. I kind of want you guys to get up and move away from your computers for a little bit. Go be human, get some fresh air and some water or caffeine or whatever it is you need to get. So again, don't panic if you feel like you didn't get everything done. I was sort of keeping track of everybody. I did respond to all of the annotated bibliography drafts that were on the board. If you still need to finish up, you're going to have a little bit of time at the end of class, but again, it's really, that's your only homework that's due tonight, is the responses to this revision group discussion board. Okay, so let's go take about a 12-minute break, and then we will start discussing some other things. Okay, so go be human. We'll start up again in 12 minutes. I'll get the timer up on the screen, okay? In the meantime, if you guys have any questions, you can always put them in the chat box directly. So let's see here. Let me just write this in the chat box. So if you guys recall correctly, when we play Kahoot, you can either do it by the app on your phone, or you can go to the website kahoot.it. So while you guys are getting ready, let me actually get it loaded up so you have a code to punch in. It takes just a moment. Let me get rid of my face and share my screen. So as I said, this is just it's an MLA review, okay? It'll load up the pin for us while it probably blasts us with music. Oh, not too bad. Okay, so put in that pin. Go ahead and type in a nickname, and we will wait for everybody and then get started. And as always, let me know if it gives you any issues. Yeah, I see 3 of you. Are the rest of you having some issues getting in, or have you gotten in but it's not showing you up on my screen? Turn this down for a second. Okay, hopefully you guys can hear me here now. Is anybody having a hard time getting in? Because I only see 3 of you in here. Let's see here. Okay. All right, and that's what I wondered, if some of you were having some technical difficulties here. So we will wait. Let's all be patient then. While technical difficulties hopefully resolve themselves. Okay, we're getting there. Oh no, it booted one of you. Look at the screen. Sometimes it does that because of your connection. Okay. Yeah, we're just waiting on one of your classmates. I know it was having a problem. We were having a problem with it loading here. This is where technology is great when it works, and when it doesn't, it's not great. Oh no, we lost somebody again. Okay, all right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and get started while it has you 5 in here. This is MLA review. It's formatting, it's works cited. Choose the best answer possible. This correct title should be centered at the top of your sources page. Remember, we have that sources page at the end of our paper. What title should be at the top of that page? Okay, very good. Very, very good. Works cited, okay? Make sure that you have both of those words and that both of them are capitalized, okay? Because it's an actual title. All right, good job. And if you're having problems answering the question, like I know that sometimes Kahoot boots you guys out, just guess as we go along, okay? It's one of the benefits of when we're on campus, we could be using the school's computers. Okay, let's keep going. Your works cited should include what? You have a 50-50 chance here. What should be included on our works cited page? Okay. Citations for every article and image you use, okay? So in your research, you guys are going to, I'm sure, find a lot of stuff. You're going to look at a lot of things, but the only sources you have to have on your paper are the ones, or on your works cited page, are the ones that you use within your paper, okay? All right. Citations are properly formatted by, think of the citations that we've used so far with your annotated bibliographies. What one of these formats do we need to apply? Okay, good job. We have to use that hanging indent for our citations. You remember, so our hanging indent is that first line is justified all the way over to the left, but any subsequent lines for that citation are actually tabbed in, okay? We actually will never number our citations in our papers at all, okay? But we always have to have that hanging indent. Okay, let's keep going. Citations should appear in the following order. So still referencing the works cited page. That was weird. That was emails coming in. Sorry about that. How should they be ordered on your works cited page? Very good. Okay, they are in alphabetical order. Sometimes you're going to have sources that don't have an author's name, and we're going to use that article title. So you look at the first word in the citation, okay? All right, let's keep going. If you can't find the author's name in your source, you should, and I actually just told you, if you were listening, I told you what you should do if you can't find an author's name or it doesn't have an author's name. What should you use? Okay, you're actually supposed to use the name of the article. Within your citation, you will actually list the name of the website, but we don't use the name of the website as the author. The name of the website is what we call the publisher. Okay, so you will use the name of your article first in your citations. Okay, author names appear in the following order. How are they supposed to be written out on that works cited page when we're talking about those citations? Very good. Last name, then first name, and then middle name or middle initial if one is listed. Okay, the title of a publication should be in quotation marks, in italics, bold, underline. What should we do to the title of the publication? Okay, very good. So the title of a publication, that's what we call it like the mother work, okay? It's the big building of work. That needs to be in italics. Very good. So if we're talking about like New York Times, that would be italicized. If we were talking about, trying to think, I was trying to even think of channels. Hulu would be in italics. YouTube would be in italics. Those are all types of publications, okay? The title of an article appears in quotation marks, in italics, in bold, or underlined. What do we do with an article? The name of the article. Okay, very good. So, the name of the article actually just goes in quotation marks. And you guys have done that even with your annotated bibliographies when you've been referring back to the titles of the sources that you're writing about. You've been putting them into quotation marks, so you've been doing an excellent job with that. There's actually, when we're talking about MLA, there's actually no part of the citation or titles or any of that actually would ever be in bold. APA is a different story, but I don't want to confuse you with what you would do over there. But in MLA, we don't need to use bolding at all. You can usually find the name of a publisher on a website where? At the top of the site, in the website address, or at the bottom of the site or about page. Where do you usually find that name of the actual publisher? Very good. Very good. Those of you that got booted out and disconnected, I hope you're guessing along. The date which appears in the citation is what? We see a date in the citation, but what actually is that date? Very good. It's the publication date. All right. You guys are doing awesome. Not many left. You must include the access date in the citation. True or false? When we're talking about that citation, do we have to include the access date? Ooh, okay. This was a tricky one because in MLA 7, you actually were required to include that access date. But with the changes for MLA 8, they don't require that. They only require the publication date. However, I will tell you that if you use like EasyBib or anything like that, they're going to include the access date. I am not going to mark off any points if you include that in your citation, but just know that MLA 8 does not require the access date. In MLA 8, you must include the full website address for any resources found on the internet. Is that true or false? Do you have to include a full website address for any resources that you found on the internet? Okay, true. Way back when, you actually just had to put the type of publication that it was, so you could just put web. But you need to include that direct link to your source that you found on the internet. Okay, almost done, guys. After each type of information in a citation, you should put a period, then a space. So they're talking about the citation and all that information in there. Are you supposed to put a period and then a space? Okay, another split. It is actually true. That's how we separate what they call the containers in the MLA citation. So you know, like, okay, this is the author's name, period. This is the publication, period. This is the publication date, period. It's just another way to kind of organize and separate it. Okay, a couple more. If you use an online citation generator, you should... What should you do if you have to use a citation generator? Okay, excellent. Do all that. First, you need to make sure that it's the correct format, MLA 8. Then you need to look for any additional information that maybe the tool didn't get, and make sure that it doesn't add anything extra. If you remember, I used that article, what is it? Pink used to be yellow, and it didn't find the author's name. So I had to go back and look and then enter that in. All right. Last one, I think. You can get help with making a works cited from... Who can help you out with all this stuff? Haha, exactly. All of us, okay? Yeah, we'll see what happened because I know some of you got booted out because of your connection. All right. Good job, you guys. Let me get rid of my Kahoot window here. Let's see here. Get rid of you and get rid of you. Okay. All right. Do you guys have any questions regarding all of that MLA, excuse me, works cited page? And then in a second, I'll tell you why we were focusing strictly on that page. Okay. So the reason it's so important to know that you guys understand what to put on that works cited page is because that's the foundation of where your sources are kept. So if you format all of that correctly on your works cited page, when you go to use in-text citations, you're going to be able to look for the correct information. Use the chat box. When we're talking about MLA and I'm in the body of my paper and I've just quoted a source and I need to put an in-text citation, do you guys remember what I'm supposed to put in the parentheses? What's the first piece of information I'm supposed to look for to put in those parentheses? Take a guess. See if you remember. No. Not getting it yet. Okay, so if, let's do this. Oops. Okay. So let's say, of course I don't have, I'm going to put a source up on the whiteboard there so we can kind of look at that just to make sure you guys know or are comfortable with using in-text citations. In-text citations are something that we're going to work with more a little bit on Monday as well. Okay, so the whiteboard kind of cuts it off, but you get the idea. So let's say that in my paper, I want to use some quotes or paraphrases or summaries from a Tabitha Moses article, how talking about the coronavirus. Okay, so let's say that I have a sentence where I use a direct quote from that source. Well, I have to give Tabitha Moses credit because it was her source. So in MLA, the first thing we do is we look for an author's name. And yay, I have an author's name. So it is a web-based source that doesn't have any page numbers. So in MLA, that means all I have to do is put the author and then I put my ending punctuation. Okay. APA was the one that said I had to put paragraphs. MLA, no. So if I have the page number, I include it. If I had a page number, cool, I could put that in there. But I don't have it because it's a website, web page. Okay. Now, let's just say that I didn't have an author's name. Okay. I didn't have an author's name. It wasn't written that Tabitha, or it wasn't identified that Tabitha Moses had written that article. But I still want to use, let's say I paraphrased information from the document. So think of like your discussion board. You guys paraphrased a lot of the information. Or even think of your annotated bibliographies. You've been summarizing and paraphrasing the ideas there. So I have to give somebody credit. Oh no, I don't have an author's name. So I use a shortened version of the article title. Because remember, if we don't have an author's name, we use the article title on our works cited page. All right, so I'm going to type this because I can't talk and type. And the how talking about the coronavirus as an enemy combatant is a long article title. So I would use a shortened version of my article title. I would keep it in quotation marks because it's an article title. I need to have that in there. And then again, I would put the ending punctuation there. So we will continue to work on MLA formatting. Let's see here. Okay, I'm just looking at a question. I want to make sure here. Okay, so I'm going to address this question to everybody just in case you're using Word and you're having an issue with this happening. So the question is, Word sets it up with the author's last name in the parentheses even after I enter all the information. That's okay. Depending on how you're using Word, it will automatically put that in there for you. The only time you have to have the full citation is on the works cited page. Now, let me differentiate between two types of documents. Your annotated bibliography has the three parts. It has the citation, it has your summary paragraph, it has your evaluation paragraph. For an annotated bibliography, you actually do not have to have in-text citations, okay? You just have to have the citation above your summary and your evaluation paragraphs. When we start getting into research papers, you'll have your document, and then the very last page of your document is your works cited page. That is where the full citations need to be. So within the body of your paper, you only have to have the parentheses with the author's name. Please let me know in the chat box if that made sense or if you need me to clarify. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where the word processors are great tools, but keep an eye on them because they are just a computer program. So make sure that they're putting things in properly. Okay. And again, that's one of the reasons that these revision groups are great, because we have an extra set of eyes. So on Monday, we're going to talk more about actual in-text citations because we'll start using them more and more. Okay. So you guys have any MLA questions for me at this moment in time? Okay. I'm going to take us back into Blackboard. I'm going to introduce your first research-ish paper, okay? This is one that I want you guys to, you have to work on this because you need to have a draft for Monday, okay? Already on Monday, you're going to have a draft ready. So I'm going to go to the assignments tab, okay? And I'm going to take you to the textual analysis essay. Now, let's look at the assignment details. I thought I had... Okay. I'm going to move some things around. Because I changed some wording to actually make it a little bit clearer. At least it makes it clearer to me. So let's look at the assignment details. All right. So you guys are asked to write a textual analysis essay. We have now at this point, we've read all of the sources that you're going to read. So in our sources folder, we had 8 sources, right? So now what we're asking you to do is consider like some of those sources that we've read, okay? And, you know, in our class discussions, we've talked about our interpretations of the message, of the authors. We've talked about our reactions. You know, we've hated it. We've thought it was cool, whatever. So when we're talking about analyzing, good analysts actually question your own assumptions and ideas and interpretations. We're willing to actually go and research more. We're willing to look at another point of view. We're even willing to go, okay, you know, I was just in a bad mood when I read that day. So maybe I need to go back and look at it. So a good analysis of something does quite a few things. So it breaks down the text and it answers questions. It reflects on how and why the text itself is just built the way it is. Considers like appeals that the author makes. Are there emotional appeals, logical appeals, maybe a little bit of both? Is there like a values-based approach? A cart toppling, an anti-establishment type approach, or maybe even they're just trying to scare everybody. So for this assignment, for this analysis essay, you guys are being asked to write a 3 to 4 page essay where you develop a clear interpretation of 1, 2, or 3 of our sources. Okay, so I'm leaving it up to you guys. You can choose 1, 2, or 3 of our sources to really analyze. If you choose 2 sources, you might compare them if you wanted to, or you can focus on one source and really pick it apart. Okay. All right. Okay. So here is what I want you guys to really kind of think about. So for this essay, you're focusing primarily on how the author makes his or her point. So think back to your annotated bibliographies. Your annotated bibliographies and the discussion boards on the sources can actually help you with this paper. So you're picking it apart. You're not using this paper to actually just summarize the article, okay? Because remember, with our annotated bibliographies, we have a summary paragraph, we have an analysis paragraph, okay? This is an analysis essay. Granted, you may need to summarize certain pieces of the article, but this is not a book report, okay? We are asking you to analyze our sources. Please feel free to integrate quotes and paraphrases, okay? You actually need to try to write a thesis for this. You let your reader know where you're going with it. And we're going to look at some examples in just a minute, okay? Look at the bulleted list here. You don't have to do all of these things, but it sure would help you to use these. It'll help you to kind of build that 3 pages, okay? You know, ask yourself, what mode or modes are used, okay? Did they use like a narrative? Did they use an explanation, description? Did they, was it an argumentative type of piece? Who is the audience? What's the purpose? What's the author's stance? Okay, thinking of like the Jaggers article, his stance was pretty clear in that article, wasn't he? What's the medium? So far, in our sources, you had 1 video, a TED Talk. You've had a couple of website articles. You've had a couple of journal articles. Okay, so those are the medium. Look and see if there's any emotional appeals, okay, which is what we call pathos. Or, look, does the author actually establish their credibility? Like, hey, I've done this, so I know what I'm talking about. Remember the Mr. Rogers article? Our author is like the head of a Mr. Rogers organization, and he's written books and everything. So that kind of establishes his credibility for that source, okay? How does the text logic or logos work? Okay, is it independent? Is there a cause-effect relationship? Do they use comparison, contrast? Again, we're picking apart the sources. Is the language formal or informal? Okay, and when you guys are thinking specifically about how you want to like focus your essay, here are some examples from past semesters. Okay, again, just examples. You might take a couple of the sources and explain how the 2 different sources illustrate struggle issues with language, okay? Maybe you would explain how writing style effectively shows an author's point of view. Maybe you would go specific and show how Mr. Rogers' unique approach to the language of children illustrates the importance and power of language. That's almost a thesis statement written for you right there, right? So that's what we mean when we talk about a focus, okay? And then it has, the breakdown, the rubric. Okay, let me come over here to the chat box. Can you go up there? Okay. A question came through and I'm trying to think of how to explain that. So this is a really good question. So I'm going to read. So can you call secondhand information that is talking about, so like the information that we're getting, and we're written as like third person as a fact. So in this sense, for your textual analysis, when we say, does the author use facts, we're looking for like actual statistics and like, did they cite a source? And what you're doing is you're looking at, like, I'm just going to use the Mr. Rogers as an example. So I'm looking at the Mr. Rogers article and I am picking it apart. Did the author do a good job? What type of writing did he use? How does his writing, show us about Mr. Rogers' approach to language? what do we learn from this source? You know, how do we apply it? Things like that. So, and we are still supposed to try to stay in a third person because it's academic, okay? Though I could be convinced to let you guys use first person. I'm thinking if I can let you guys do that. Since it's a textual analysis and it's your analysis of the source or sources, I will allow you to use first person in this if you would like to, okay? But be consistent. Don't go like first person, second person, third person. Make sure you're consistent in whatever you choose, all right? Okay, let me take you back into the assignment folder. I want to show you, we do have a couple of different examples you can look at, okay? So I'm going to open that folder. So let's open the empathy textual analysis and open that up. Okay. So this is written in MLA format. It's called The Rippling Effect. So we have our title, and this student actually looked at two sources and is kind of comparing them. You will notice that this student did use first person, but like I said, that is okay because it's your analyzing of the pieces here, okay? So pretty much this would be the thesis right here. Overall, I feel that Hardy's article was more informative and educational compared to Platt's. However, Platt's article was easier to build a connection with because of the real life experience she enlightened to her readers. Okay. And so you can go through here and see how the student organized it and like what kinds of things that they pulled out of their sources. Okay. So please remember that you have examples in the assignments folder to look through. There's only 2, but they're still good examples. Okay, so before I show you something, do you guys have any questions so far on textual analysis? Okay, I would like to show you this 2-minute video that will maybe help you figure out how to start and how to organize. Okay, so let me pop this up here. I'm going to go ahead and start it. If at any time you have a problem with the sound or the video, please tell me in the chat box, okay?
Textual analysis means closely studying a text, discovering its meanings, and exploring why the writer made the choices that he made. This is a genre that can be applied to novels, stories, articles, lyrics, or any other form of writing. A textual analysis is not just a retelling of the narrative, or a review. What you will need to do here is analyze elements, like the language, point of view, and structure of the piece, and elaborate on how the writer uses literary devices to affect the reader and convey ideas. Before beginning your analysis, you need to carefully read the text and think of a thesis statement to keep your essay focused. Your thesis claim needs to answer the question, why is this text effective, and how is that effect achieved? Carefully read the text and take initial notes. As you read, pay attention to the things that are most intriguing, exciting, or even confusing. These are the things you can really use in your analysis. Your goal here is not simply to explain the plot, but to analyze the writing itself and discuss how the text works on different levels. As you analyze each aspect of the text, try to think about how they all relate to one another. The introduction provides a quick overview of the direction in which your argument is heading. It should include your thesis statement and a summary of the essay's structure. The body of your essay contains your arguments and the textual evidence that supports them. A good way to approach the conclusion is to briefly summarize your main points and then highlight the conclusion they've led you to. The SA's team hopes you will have no problem dealing with textual analysis in the future. If you do run into some stubborn task with a nasty deadline, come to us for help. And
don't go to them for help, okay? Go to the librarians or the tutors. Okay, I'm actually going to full screen this again really quickly, but I'm going to come back. So the first thing you guys need to do is decide
made the choices that he made.
If you want to use 1, 2, or 3 of our sources, okay? And these are the language sources from our language sources folder. Decide if you just want to look at 1, if you want to use 2, or if you even want to use 3, okay? Really look at the meanings in the document, okay? Like, what's the message here? Look at the choices that the writer made. I'm trying to like fast forward here without watching the whole thing. Okay. Look for like these types of elements, the language used, the point of view, so like the author's opinion. Look at the structure. I think it was how we talk about the coronavirus as an enemy combatant. That one has quite a few images. They're like startling images. Feel free to pick those images apart if that's one of the things that you, one of the sources that you want to use to look at. So you need to be thinking about a thesis statement. And I know some of you guys work backwards, which is fine, but try to be thinking of a thesis statement. Ask yourself as you're looking at the sources. So we've read through all of them. So you have that under your belt. Now go back to them. Try to make your choice of which one or ones you want to use and ask yourself, why is the text effective? Or why is it not effective? Why is it terrible? Why was it, not effective at all? Then ask yourself, how is that effect achieved? Or if it wasn't successful, explain why. Why wasn't it successful? What was so wrong? What was so terrible? Then you're going to kind of look through. Trying to get through here. As I fast forward. Okay, that's the image I wanted to get to. Okay. So if you are an outliner, you like to do outlines and you like to get your organization that way, think of this visual. You need to have an introduction. You need to introduce us into what's about to happen in this paper. Then you need to give us a thesis statement. And within that thesis statement, give us a structure, like what are you going to address first? In that empathy essay, the thesis in there actually said, this essay was, better than this essay because of this and this, but this essay was good because of this. So we know that you're going to talk about this, and then this. Okay, that kind of gives us some structure. And then in the main body of your paper, this is where you're going to have all of those points, all of those thoughts that you had that you wanted to talk about. You're going to use proof. So you're going to use direct quotes. You're going to use paraphrases from the sources. You don't need to do any additional research. You are literally just looking at those sources from our sources folder. Okay. So don't think you have to go out and look for something else. No, use the sources that we have. And then once you get to your conclusion, make sure that you just kind of talk about the main points that you addressed, sum it up, and then maybe let us know why you did what you did and why it's important. Okay. So within this assignment folder, I have this image here that says how to get started. Okay. Because you may be going, how to get started. So the first thing that I want you guys to do is to decide on how many sources you're using and which ones. Then go through and answer those questions that were in that video, okay? If you can answer the questions, why is it effective or ineffective? How did the author achieve that? What did they do wrong? Those answers can actually help you create a working thesis, okay? So once you can kind of get into that, then start analyzing the sources. Go back to the assignment details and look at like all the different questions that it asks. Then start drafting, kind of figuring out how you want to organize your thoughts, okay? Here's what I want you guys to do. For Monday, okay, so you have some time to work on this. For Monday, go to the discussion board, scroll all the way down to the bottom, kind of like where the annotated bibliography revision groups are. Look at, there's a textual analysis revision group. For Monday, I want you guys to post a rough draft before class. Now, your final draft has to be at least 3 pages long, right? MLA format, double space, all of that. So if on Monday, all you have is a page and a half, I want you to post your page and a half, because maybe you're stumped and you don't know how to go forward and you're not sure what else to add. That's fine, because we're going to address that on the revision group, okay, or within the revision group. So my main goals for you are to decide on your sources, try to write a working thesis statement, and try to think of, some of those points. Get your thoughts on the page so that we can help you organize, we can help you elaborate, we can help you with whatever you need help with, okay? So for Monday, please post a rough draft of your textual analysis essay on the textual analysis essay revision group discussion board. Those titles are so long. Do you guys have any questions on that? Okay, we're getting into the writing of the papers, and it's gonna move fast because this is an 8-week course. So do your best to stay on top of it here, okay? So that's something that needs to be done before class on Monday. Now I'm gonna scroll up a little bit. Still on the discussion board. So you guys, you had the punctuation discussion board and you got to write a little story, right? So that was fun. And you used your punctuation in there. So I have another discussion board for you, and this one is mechanics. So specifically, the mechanics that we want to look at are capital letters, numbers, and abbreviations, okay? There are links to the Purdue OWL website that they give you the rules for these specific types of mechanics. I want you guys to go and cruise through, look at those pages. If you have any specific questions on, do I capitalize this or not? Maybe pay close attention to the capital letters page. For this discussion board, what I am asking you to do is you are either going to, you have the option of using the story that you wrote for your punctuation discussion board. Okay, sorry, my nose itches all of a sudden. You can use that story, or you can write a whole new story. Okay, I even give you some prompts here if you need some help writing a whole new story. But for this discussion board, I need you to add in one example of correct capitalization, one example of number usage, correct obviously, and one example of a correct abbreviation usage in there. And of course, make sure your spelling is good. Yes, the werewolf in the treehouse. How did you guys even remember that from Monday? So you have the option, again, you can use that story that you already wrote for your punctuation discussion board and then just add those 3 different examples of mechanics in there. Or please feel free to write another story. I have some students who just love to write creative stories. So there you go. There's your option. Okay. So that needs to be done before class. Make sure I'm not telling you wrong. Yeah. So that needs to be done by class time on Monday. Those 2 things. Okay. Let me take us to the to-do lists. Okay. All right, so today is the 12th. By tonight, you need to, if you didn't get a chance to do it in class while we were working, you need to, whoa, where did we go? You need to respond to, wait, where am I at? I gotta look at this really quickly before I tell you wrong. Why do I have that written wrong? Give me a moment, guys. Today's not the 12th, today's the 14th. No wonder it wasn't making sense. Hoi. I need more caffeine. Okay. All right, so by tonight, the only things that you guys need to do by midnight is to go to that annotated bibliography source 2 revision group. If you didn't get a chance to reply to 2 of your classmates, just make sure you get that finished by midnight tonight. Those of you, I don't know if I am missing anybody from class, so anybody who happens to not be in class that's watching the videos, you need to get that in right away. By the time we meet on Monday, you guys need to have a first draft of your textual analysis essay, and you need to post that on the textual analysis revision group discussion board, because we're going to be using that in class on Monday. And then also go ahead and do your little creative story for the mechanics discussion board. And just remember, you have to have an example of correct capitalization, an example of a correct number usage, and an example of abbreviations. Okay? So the big meaty thing that you guys need to be working on is the textual analysis. And remember, this 8-week class, so it's like double time. You know, in a 12-week class, you'd have a couple of weeks to work on a textual analysis. You're really only going to get about maybe a weekish here to work on it, because the final draft of the textual analysis, I'm trying to find that. Well, maybe you get about a week and a half. So attack it, work hard. When we get to class on Monday, we're really going to be looking at thesis statements for your textual analysis. So if maybe when you're working on it this weekend, and you're struggling and you're just really having a hard time generating that thesis statement, that's something that we are really going to work on Monday. And we're really going to work on like creating the structure of that textual analysis. Okay. So please have a draft posted to that revision group, so we have something to look at on Monday. Okay. Even if you were a total slacker and the only thing you worked on was a thesis statement, we still want to see it because we want to help you out with whatever you have. But please don't write only a thesis statement. Try to write more than that. Okay. Okay. Do you guys have any questions regarding the textual analysis or the mechanics discussion board post or even the annotated bibliography source 2 revision group? Okay, here's what we're going to do. I always like to give you guys at least a little bit of time here. So utilize this last little bit of class maybe to look at the sources. Oh, hey, that was a good question. So, okay. So the question was, when is the final draft of the annotation source 2 due? It is due on midnight by the 19th. Okay. So that's why I try to give you the looking ahead. But yeah, the final draft for annotated bibliography source 2 is due midnight on the 19th. Okay. Any other questions? As in 419, yes. So please utilize this last little bit of time. Go look at the sources. Really think about if you want to use 1, if you want to use 2, or if you want to use like 3 sources. And just remember, the only sources you need to use are here in the learning plan folder, sources, language sources. These are the only sources that you need to pull from. Okay? So use those sources, utilize everything that we've posted on the discussion board for any of the sources to kind of help you. Go back into the textual analysis assignment folder and feel free to look at that video again if you need a little more help. Look at the assignment details that are in that folder. And even come back here to this image right here, the decide on 1 to 2 sources, whatever. Just know that you guys have some things to look back on to help you out. So I will let you guys sign out and work if you want to. I'm going to stay here in class just in case you guys have any questions at all, okay? So if you don't have any questions, have a great weekend. You got a chunk of work to do, but I have faith in you, and I will see you guys on Monday, okay?
Thank you.
Yep, have a great one.
You too.
You too.